it's high time we talked about everyone's favorite maniac on the DRG crew, the Driller.
Explosive device!
Wait, stop. Pause it for a second. I've just been told this intro sequence has been done way too many times. Let's rewind it and spice it up a bit with a little more personal touch, yeah? That's better. Alright, now where was I? Yes. The Driller is our resident pyromaniac and explosives expert. If I could describe this class, it would be not what you expect. On first glance, the Driller looks like a straightforward and rather simple class, but that couldn't be further from the truth. I wish I could say it was as simple as take gun, point and shoot, throw explosives, but we would only be scratching the surface of the enigma that is the Driller.
The inner machinations of my mind are an enigma.
Once you peel back the exterior of a Driller's mindset, you notice there's a lot more finesse and technique in the playstyle of a Driller. If anything, the Driller's greatest deception is that they are not a beginner class. That honor goes to the Gunner and Scout. Instead, I would consider the Driller an advanced class, on par with the Engineer. But how could I describe all this? How can I describe the complexities and nuances of a Driller in simple, condensed explanations? This stunned me for a while, and I almost gave up trying to figure one out. Until a light bulb lit up in my head.
I've just had an apostrophe. I think you mean an epiphany. Lightning. It's just struck my brain.
The answer was right in front of me. I can describe the Driller using the 3 C's. What are the 3 C's, you ask? They are the following: crowd control, cave control, and C4. These 3 things are the very foundation of the role of a Driller, and if we can understand these 3 concepts, we can understand the Driller in its entirety. So what is the definition of crowd control? Well, it says here that it's the public security practice in which large crowds are managed. Hold on. That's not the right definition. We need the video game definition. Alright, let's see here. Alright, so based on some quick Google searches, we can summarize crowd control as tools or abilities that suppress groups of enemies, with an emphasis on debuffing and controlling their actions. And the Driller's weaponry is the primary definition of crowd control. Now, the Driller dishes out crowd control in 3 distinct flavors, so to speak: fire, ice, and acid. The flamethrower is the Driller's iconic and classic weapon, capable of engulfing hordes of enemies in flames. Those that aren't immediately burnt to a crisp suffer afterburn damage that chips away at their health. This makes the flamethrower ideal for spreading out large amounts of damage across a multitude of enemies. With extra modifications, the Driller can alter their flamethrowers to be more effective at leaving trails of fire on the ground, which not only damage enemies who walk through them, but also slows them down, causing even more fire damage. And if you really want to twist the knife, the Flamer can be modded to inflict fear upon burning enemies, allowing you to easily scatter and sow chaos among their ranks. Then on the opposite end we have the Cryo Cannon, the polar opposite, no pun intended, of a flamethrower. Instead of flames, you engulf enemies in rays of ice capable of freezing enemies. In addition to being immobile, frozen enemies also take triple damage from all sources, allowing the Driller to set up devastating domino effects for themselves or their teammates in erasing enemies in the blink of an eye. The Cryo Cannon also has a particular edge against flying enemies due to its ability to one-shot them if they are completely frozen, invaluable versus Mactera, who can easily swarm and overwhelm your team if they aren't dealt with post-haste. Then there's the Corrosive Sludge Pump, which fires, you guessed it, globs of toxic sludge at enemies. In addition to breaking almost every rule of the Geneva Convention, the Sludge Pump has 2 fire modes, with the primary fire shooting singular globs at enemies, or a secondary charge shot that fires a powerful sludge bomb that breaks into several puddles on impact. On top of being a health violation, enemies hit by the sludge are afflicted with corrosion that deals damage over time, reduces their speed, and even melts away the armor of stronger enemies. Then there's the puddles themselves that act as ground hazards, which slow enemies further and afflicts them with even more corrosion. You can even modify the weapon for longer lasting puddles, more puddle fragments, or even stronger slowdown or corrosive effects. All three of these weapons hold one thing in common, and that is the aspect of control. They each fulfill different criteria of what one can expect from crowd control. The Flamer spreads out massive amounts of damage and burn status through large hordes of bugs across wide areas, fulfilling the most basic criteria of crowd control, keeping enemy numbers low. It can easily deny hordes of enemies from overwhelming your team, and added modifications like sticky flames and fear can create breathing room for you and your team. The crowd cannon is focused on purely immobilizing enemies. An enemy that is frozen is an enemy that is not moving, not taking actions, and not using their attacks. It is all about immediate denial when freezing enemies, particularly against larger opponents and flying enemies, the types you want to be rid of ASAP. Then there's the sludge pump, which emphasizes slowing opponents along with long-lasting damage over time. Shooting enough sludge puddles everywhere can easily lock down an area, which can allow you and your teammates to hold your own against even the most dangerous groups of bugs. There's one other factor that contributes to the driller's expertise in crowd control, and that is their surprising ammo efficiency. This can be easily overlooked by newer players, as it's very tempting to just hold down the trigger till everything is burnt to a crisp. Fun? Yes. However, you end up burning, no pun intended, through your ammo reserves pretty quickly. This all changes when you realize the potential behind the status effects of each weapon. If you're familiar with the phrase,
Great is the weapon that cuts on its own,
then you can understand where this efficiency comes from. Effects such as afterburn and corrosion allow the driller to continually deal damage even when they are not actively participating in combat, spending less ammo in the process. Same can be said for the crowd cannon's frozen status, which makes enemies take 3 times more damage, which means spending less ammo to get rid of them. When you take the rest of his gear into account, secondaries, overclocks, grenades, this efficiency is stretched even further, from reusable throwing axes, devastating kitchen appliances, and overclocks capable of leaving scorched earth in their wake, to name a few. All of this allows the driller to establish definitive control over the battlefield. If crowd control represents the driller's relationship with enemies, then cave control represents the driller's relation with the terrain of Hoxie's. The driller's, drills are one of the few traversal tools that have few limits on what it can do. Why go over the mountain when you can go through it?
Gonna pass over the mountain! Let us go under it! Let us go through the mines of Moria!
When it comes to other traversal tools, engineers can only place so many platforms. Gunners have to be mindful of how they deploy zip lines to maximize their effectiveness, and scouts can only work with the geography they got. Drillers, however, are not beholden to any of this. Their traversal tool is the entire cave. Or, to rephrase that, they can traverse anywhere. I mentioned earlier that there's a lot more to the driller than meets the eye, and mobility is another deceptive trait. They don't have the velocity of a scout, but their ability to rapidly construct tunnels and break through walls allows them to quickly relocate to new positions. This type of cave control is invaluable due to the utility it provides. The one thing a driller never needs to forget is there is nothing they can't break. The utility of removing obstacles and reshaping terrain into tunnels, ramps, and opened walls should not be underestimated, as they provide you and your team easier areas of traversal and create pathways in places where they did not exist before. Invaluable in biomes which are particularly dangerous to explore. Speaking of utility, I'm sure we can all relate to these following scenarios. At some point in your DRG career, you will have encountered the following. A very complex and unkind cave system that is hell to traverse. Cramped bases, elemental hazards, obscene verticality, etc, etc, etc. Mission control dropping equipment in extremely out-of-reach places, be it a ledge or completely different cave. Drop pods arriving in poor locations cut off from the team. or some combination of these three, you get the idea. These scenarios can cause serious snags for your mission and have a tendency to make everyone's job harder, which can be game-ending if these issues aren't addressed. However, when a driller is involved, these problems become non-existent. Drillers can clean up cluttered caves by removing obstructions or create new, less dangerous pathways that allow for safer and faster traversal. For poorly placed mission equipment, drillers can drill down equipment to lower and relocate it to more accessible and defensible locations. And as for extractions, drillers provide the best utility of all: tunnel routes directly to the drop pod's location. It is also particularly useful when the drop pod is surrounded by heavy debris or solid rock. This makes extracting the team faster and safer than manually backtracking through the cave. The driller's ability to control the very landscape around them is a force to be reckoned with, and can very well be the difference between success and failure. Rounding off our third and final C is the driller's iconic and equally infamous utility tool, the C4 charge. Contrary to popular belief, C4 is used for more than blowing up your teammates. It's a genuinely powerful tool that can be built for wide-range excavation, or as an extra set of superpowered explosives that can annihilate the toughest foes. Regardless of how it's built, the C4 is unmatched in its ability to rapidly clear terrain in a short amount of time. This expedites the time needed in creating alternate routes, removing obstructions, or forming holdout locations that give your team a defensive edge. Such examples include creating bunkers and walls that create a pocket of safety for your team while forcing enemies through lethal choke points, or removing obstructions to create new sight lines for your allies, and creating deeper terrain that forces enemies to travel farther to get to your team. So some of you might be thinking, doesn't this all fall under cave control? And this is a fair question. All this sounds similar to what we discussed previously. But the reason for separating these two is due to the fact that C4 is a skill set on its own and should not be used carelessly. This is not just because it has a low ammo count, although it's certainly a factor. This is due to how destructive C4 is. An analogy to describe both of the driller's excavation tools is, funnily enough, a scalpel and sledgehammer. The drills are the driller equivalent to a scalpel, allowing the driller to make precise edits to the terrain. Even if mistakes are made during excavation, they can be easily corrected, which makes C4 the obvious sledgehammer, capable of clearing massive amounts of terrain in a single instance. But once that terrain is gone, it's gone. Unless there is an engineer on the team, you have to work with whatever new terrain is created, for good or ill. Not every situation calls for deep bunkers, and not every cave needs to be ventilated with bunches of holes and craters. When used effectively, C4 can open up new opportunities for you and your team. Ineffective use, however, will greatly hinder your team and make it all the more easier for enemies to wipe out your squad. It is important that you use discretion and control to get the most out of the terrain-altering power of the C4 explosive. So what is the driller at the end of the day? If Gunner is all about adaptability, and Scout is all about speed, what is the driller's core trait? Well, we've showcased their ability to keep enemies in check, their power in reshaping terrain, and their destructive responsibility that comes from handling one of the most dangerous explosives in the game. But these are just parts of a bigger picture. And the best part is, we already know the answer. We've said it multiple times throughout this analysis. All of this allows the driller to establish definitive control. The driller's ability to control the very landscape around. It is important that you use discretion and control to get the most out of the terrain. The driller is a class all about control. This is what sets them apart from every other class. Their ability to exert an immense amount of control and influence through their own actions. Whether it's wrangling enemies, reshaping terrain, or repositioning objectives, this is the true power a driller holds. They establish dominance over the situations they are in, and ultimately make the bugs and caves play by your rules, your parameters, your final say. It is ultimately what ties all their skills together. The driller at the end of the day may look like a chaotic mess. And don't get me wrong, a good driller knows how to embrace the chaos. But a great driller is the one who balances their destructive habits with self-control. As long as you keep these two in check, the driller is an unstoppable force of nature in the landscape of Hoxies.